I'm honored to be here at Slush. I'm going to talk today about kind of where medicine and technology meet and how we think about empathy in the context of technology and medicine. So I've been thinking a lot about where technology and medicine meet, and I've kind of come up with this concept of digital empathy, because empathy is a very analog concept. We all live in analog, although we use digital tools. So as I've been thinking about how to make technology feel human and real, I've come up with these definitions, which you can take a look at. So in the world of technology, I'm from Silicon Valley, it's a world of move fast and break things. I think Mark Zuckerberg said that. And in general, people in technology want things to go viral. They want things to have a network effect. And the truth is in medicine, we try to move slow and not kill people. We don't try to move fast and break things. And if we're lucky, things go bacterial in medicine. They don't really go viral. The only thing that goes virus in medicine is viruses, actually. So I put this slide up to just show the concept of an ecosystem, and most technology that goes into an industry finds an ecosystem where it has a home, and you can say this is where technology should disrupt something, and this is how it affects everything else. Medicine's a little different because it's highly regulated. This is a slide that shows the complexity of the ecosystem, or as I say, the freakosystem in medicine. And these are all different regulatory agencies and how data flows. And so it's super complicated and highly regulated. And you realize that in medicine, that when you tug on a single thing or you put technology in a single place, you realize it's connected to everything else. And so if you build something here, thinking you're going to affect something here, you actually might not affect that thing, and you might affect a bunch of other things. Hence, move slow and don't kill people. And then the other concept I want to briefly talk about, I'm going to start meta, and then I'm going to get very detailed about where technology really fits in medicine, is health is connected to a lot of other things that have nothing to do with technology, with your socioeconomic status, your heredity, your childhood development. So health is not just a very simple thing. It's a complex concept, and a lot of people walk into health tech thinking, oh, I'll just build an app for that. But it's hard to build an app for that. So there's two fundamental models in healthcare. The illness model, which is the model we all live in, which is really kind of an artifact of a bunch of patches that we've been putting on the healthcare system over the decades. And we don't actually have a healthcare system in any country. It's really an illness system based on a bunch of patches, which is very reactive. And it's really trying to, how do you get the diagnosis? How do you understand the risks? How do you receive the treatment? And then how do you get follow-up? You're lucky if it's proactive follow-up, by the way. Most follow-up doesn't happen. So we live in a reactive world, whereas the other world, which we should all be striving towards and building towards, is a prevention, surveillance, mindful path to getting personalized health and nutrition, understanding measurement tools to get feedback about where we are. And really, people talk a lot about fitness as a way to solve problems, but what you put in your mouth is far more important than how much exercise you do. So as I said earlier, empathy is analog, and empathy is really understanding somebody else or putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Again, I say analog because feelings and emotions are analog, and technology is digital. We have vital signs, and all the trackers and sensors that we all wear check your heart rate, your blood pressure, your respiratory rate, maybe your oxygenation. But the truth is they don't tell you that you're vital. They just tell you if you're alive or you're dead. If your vital signs aren't there, you're dead, and if they're there, you're in some form of alive. But they don't speak to vitality. And I've come up with a series of things called vitality signs, which are what are your relationships with time, with romance, with your family. And these really start to unpack who you are, so that you can develop a meaningful relationship in the context of medicine and empathy. So I want to talk briefly about framing of health care and health tech, because I see probably 5 startups a week come by my office and say, hey doc, I got this cool technology. I'm gonna really empower the consumer. And so I want to spend a minute talking about patients and consumers, because patients and consumers, in my mind, are very different people. But in the world of technology, if you're building for a consumer and you want to build a consumer app, completely different than building a patient app. So this is what a consumer looks like to me. This is what a person not buying anything, not in the healthcare system. And then this is a patient. And one of my pithy lines is I've never seen a consumer in the intensive care unit. And there's a big buzzword around consumer health and how do we do that? And so just to put a fine point on my definition of the distinction between consumers don't equal patients, or consumers you have free will. You can buy something or not. You have unlimited options. You're usually excited about taking the money that you've earned and spending it on something. And when you do that, you then get something you didn't have before. So you've added to your baseline. And you'll find consumers in the mall or at Amazon, and we save money so we can spend it. Patients, on the other hand, they don't have a choice. They must make a decision. If you're in pain, you have to do something. You have to make it go away, or you're trying to figure out a way to make it go away. So you don't have a lot of options for that pain. It can be a pill, it can be whatever the treatment option is. There's usually three: something conservative, something aggressive, and something in the middle. You're usually oriented around anxiety, and this is a fine point. The point to make in this slide is that when you're anxious, you're not thinking clearly. You're not making decisions like a consumer. Just think about the last time you had a lump or a pain and you weren't sure what it was. You were kind of freaked out. And remember, in healthcare, you're not getting something that you had before you didn't have it, adding to your life like a consumer. You're trying to get something back. You're in pain, you want that pain to go away. You're nauseous, you want that nausea to go away. And I'm talking about real health and medicine, not kind of the stuff that's peripheral to it. So there's two reasons to see a doctor or to go into the healthcare system. One is the condition or the disease is unbearable. And the other one is the anxiety about the condition or the disease is unbearable. And again, I go back to anxiety because most doctor visits, most people go online because they're anxious about not knowing what their problem is. That's the number one reason you go to a doctor or go online. And once you go online, you run into this world of probability. It could be this, it could be that. And so that makes you even more anxious. So and then by the way, when you go online, the last thing you want to find out is that it could be cancer, because that's what you're hoping it doesn't say. But Google always tells you it could be cancer. And so I say Google's an oncologist. And so you shouldn't really go asking Google questions, because you will be even more anxious. So not good. So in general, the way I think about people in the healthcare system, it's not just what's the matter with you, it's what matters to you and what's the matter with you. So again, this goes to understanding, what matters to you requires time and conversations and empathy. So briefly, there's a, why is this slide here? This slide is to speak to the concept of the moral hazard. And the moral hazard is an economic principle that the more I do, the more I make. So I want to do things. And if I walk into a muffler shop with my car making a noise, I'm going to get a new muffler. And so this guy's incentivized to sell you mufflers, whether you need one or not. And in healthcare, that's a problem when you go to doctors and they actually get paid to do things, or there's some incentive to do things, versus the opposite economic principle, which is the moral imperative. How do doctors get on the same side of patients, where if you get a good outcome, I win? Not just, and maybe I get financially, so to speak, I could get a bonus if everybody got well without any complications. So that would actually incentivize me to start designing systems around keeping people really well. So I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit, talk about digital health and where that is. And again, I've been following this industry now for 10 years since it kind of got started. And these are just publications that have been created about e-health, digital health, and mobile health over the last 2 decades. And you can see we're finally at this point where people are taking it seriously. The people are actually doing studies. Again, move slow, don't kill people. Do research to make sure that what you're doing works, because it's not just like you want to put out a release and then, oh, there's a bug in that software, let me go back and patch the bug. That bug could kill people. So now we're doing research, and these are all on PubMed, which is the catalog of all the publications. So this is dimension of app functionality, and this could probably be applied to everything. I look through the lens of healthcare, of course. And so, apps can inform, instruct, record, display, guide, remind, alert, and communicate. And I bet if you guys all thought to yourself for 1 second, what do I use apps on my phone for, whatever they're for, and ask what category they go in, hold that thought, but I guess I think I know what most people use apps for. So in healthcare, these are what people are building healthcare applications for as a category. And what I said earlier is that everything's connected. So if you're trying to solve for mental health or diabetes, or they're all, diabetes is connected to mental health, but they're building apps that are just mental health that aren't diabetes, and diabetes that aren't mental health, and it's all connected to me. And so building these apps that are just do one thing don't really solve anybody's real problem, but solve a little problem. And so going back to, the dimensionality, I want you to look at this slide carefully. These are what people are building apps for. And these are the tens of thousands of apps. At the very top, it's to inform, like checking your sports scores or checking weather. That would be in the consumer world, but in healthcare, maybe you get information instructions. Communication at the bottom. I bet that most people use their phone to communicate, their apps to communicate, whether it's Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, WeChat, Facebook. So in healthcare, we haven't cracked the communication code, and I believe that the fundamental unit of humanity is a conversation. We wake up and that's all we do is we communicate all day long with people. And yet in healthcare, we can't build apps that communicate with people. And then when you look at what they're building is this stuff in fitness. So fitness is interesting. It's adjacent to healthcare, in my opinion. Again, the real world of healthcare, this multi-trillion-dollar industry of healthcare. People are building for the billion-dollar industry of fitness. Interesting, completely insufficient, in my opinion. And then if you look at who they're building it for, again, fitness and lifestyle and stress, diet, nutrition, and then, 2% doctors and, my world. So people aren't really building in my world because it's hard. And so, let's get more sensors then. Let's put sensors on everything and get these sensors. So I think sensors are important, and they'll add a lot to the healthcare kind of conundrum of getting the data. But, by the way, we have sensors, and they're built into the side of our head, and they're called ears. And we don't really use them that much, and we're kind of outsourcing our ears to sensors. And in the medical world, you really do want to listen to people in what they have to say. And sensors listen in a different way, but we don't use these other sensors that are built into our bodies as much as we should. So how do you get people to do things in healthcare? With applications and technology? Well, you need to engage them. They need to be engaged. And this is a model for engagement. Sorry, the slide's a little bit goofy. But you need a sense of connectedness and continuity. And when you have these two things, you get a sense of empowerment. And empowerment is kind of the ability to create some sense of empathy where you trust things, and then you'll move to engagement. And that's really the secret. So we spend, less than 1% of our time in the doctor's office. We spend 99+% of the time in the real world. So how do you bridge the gap? So in my exploration, I looked at technology in Silicon Valley 10 years ago, 8 years ago. What works for me? And I realized that doctors don't have any technology that works for them. It mostly works against them. And patients don't have a ability to use technology that makes their healthcare experience better. So I embarked to build something, which I built, and I'm going to show for the first time some of the data we've captured and will be publishing soon. So the company's called Healthloop, and it's the feedback loop about your condition that connects you and communicates with you and your doctor. It's not you connecting with an app. It's not you connecting with some third party you don't know in some other country or state. It's you and your medical doctor use this together. And what it kind of shows you is, this is not the web version, but it says, hey, you just had knee surgery. How are you doing today? These are some things you need to know about, and tell me how you're doing. So it gives you information that's contextual and relevant today, and then it asks you how you're doing. And then it starts tracking how you're doing, and if you're kind of falling off the trend, your doctor will get notified. So it's a proactive, asynchronous, exception-based tool that gives you valid, credible information on time. So what have we found? And so the physician, by the way, they press play on these loops, and they don't do anything except for find out that, two people have fallen off the trend of a good outcome. These are the two people out of everybody that I saw in the last 2 weeks that I need to be concerned about because they've been engaging with me. And so we have over 4 million patient interactions over the last year. So the numbers are getting interesting enough, with 50,000, and it's a really small number in the tech world, but 50,000 active patients per month. And you can see that when we connect with patients, we're not just it's not just a push, it's a push and a pull in multiple different formats. So we have lots of different ways to interact with people around the objectives of a good outcome. So When I started it, people said, hey, Jordan, no one's going to use this thing, especially the old people. Old people won't use this. And I said, well, actually, old people, most of their friends are dead, not to be a little bit morose, and health is really important to them. So I think they will engage with this. And what we found is that the 80-year-olds and plus are super motivated, and they are engaged at a 65% or greater level. And for people who know stuff about applications in healthcare, in consumer tech, getting people to use your app over and over again is really hard. So what we've shown is that we have a north of 60% engagement with all age groups. And then this is kind of over time. Before you enter the hospital, if you're having an elective surgery to get something done, before you get in the hospital, minus 21 days, all the way out to a year later, people are engaged at almost 80%. When you get the email or the text or the app that says your doctor wants to check in with you today, people check in. They care about their health. And then again, this is just another to show the level of engagement, and this is with an N of 55,000 people. So what does it all mean? So we've now been able to show, we will be publishing this, that we can decrease the risk of surgical complications using this tool because we can catch things so early that we can start treatment so people don't get blood clots in their calf, because as soon as they have a cramp in their calf, we put them on blood thinners, not the doctor does. But if they miss that cramp, it turns into a blood clot that can go up into their lungs and turn into a pulmonary embolus, and then they're in the intensive care unit, and they're really sick. So we can reduce these by 23%, 49%, and 35%, depending on the surgery. So big deal, by the way. And then we can show, and this is all US data, by the way, but we can also show that the national benchmark for patients, once they leave the hospital, the percentage of them that come back, the national average is 4.5% across all hospitals in the US. We can reduce these readmission rates by 26%, 35%. These are big numbers, and they represent a lot of money behind those numbers, because every time someone goes back to the hospital, it's really expensive, and someone's struggling and suffering when they could have not had that happen to them. And this is just a cost less, and this is based on 2,000 or 3,000 patients. But we can show that we can decrease the cost of a patient over 90 days by 50%, 77%. These numbers are, we will publish them in some journals in the United States soon, but they're staggering and impressive. So one of the things we find is that this is with 16,000 patients is, was this experience using this tool good? And 91% of people said they extremely liked it. This is fascinating to me. So this solves another problem that 86.7% of 11,000 people said because of this, they didn't need to go to the doctor or call the doctor or go online and search Google, because we gave them information that was on time and contextual. So this is do people, again, we did some satisfaction surveys. Do you like this application? 66% said yes. So just kind of in summary, this tool is it instantiates this concept of digital empathy. And I would say that, and one last thing about literacy is that people who didn't use Healthloop and had to get cancer, this is a study we did at MD Anderson, a big cancer center in the US, we increased literacy about the treatment you're about to get from 21% to 66%. These numbers are also, literacy is really important. If you don't understand what's going on, you may not engage. So we were able to show that we can improve literacy. And we have these care pathways in multiple different specialties, and we have a whole team building out content, and we build out content by listening to doctors, patients, nurses, staff in offices, and we really try to understand what are patients going through and how do we construct a narrative. So I call this the trust dome, and these are the elements that you need to factor in when you're trying to build technology in healthcare. And it's understanding people's preferences, understanding context, giving people some orientation, making it relevant so it's personal to them. There's got to be literacy, so it's got to be easy to understand. It's got to be anticipatory, proactive. It's got to be responsive. There needs to be feedback. It needs to be actionable. It needs to be shareable. It needs to be invisible, meaning it's so easy to use you didn't even know it was there. And there needs to be a function of safety and privacy and trust. So I'll close with, and I tell this to every technologist, healthcare is a people business that needs technology. It is not a technology business that just needs people. Thank you.